now that we have identified the problems, we have come into agreement that water scarcity is a real problem in our society. What are some of the solutions that we can suggest? Because water is life, so it means we need to come up with measures that can ensure that people have access to life, which is water. And we'll start with you, Brian, from the situation that you painted of Ukambani area. What we've seen, there are so many people in Ukambani who found the problem, are living with the problem, and probably they don't know what to do about the problem. What are some of the strategies that you suggest for people in assault areas?
Yeah, I think Boniface, as I've said, the company is one of the most affected areas in terms of water scarcity. And once we look into it, we find that we can at least adapt to that, because we can't change the situation as fast as we can think. It's more of adapting and slowly changing the situation that we have. And in this scenario, we have rivers that flow water during rainy seasons. I think government, civil societies should tap into that and create dams. These dams will help in providing water for the cattle, because actually in our area we have one, though sometimes it dries up, but it takes some while before it dries up. And on the other end, we usually have trees that absorb a lot of water. And in this situation, I think I'll lighten our situation. Back home at our place, we have these long trees. In our traditional name, we call them sandoku. I think you know them. And these trees tend to absorb a lot of water. Actually, these trees, we planted them near our borehole, and the ball ended up having little to no water, as sometimes even you could pump and nothing was coming out. So sometimes we also have to know which species that we should also have in these areas. And this specific area now, I'm bringing in the terms of this plant. For example, we should not be having that kind of plant in those areas. So we ended up cutting them, though they are very good, striped, and they are very tall.
Yeah.
They are good for timber and other things, but in this situation, we don't need them. So we also have some perennial rivers, though they are 1 to 0. I mean, they are very few, and if you find one, it's very rare. For example, we have a river that flows from Chulu Hills.
Yeah.
This river is what provides water to the community in Ukambani. We also have the River Adi, which flows, although it's deep in the inner part of Ukambani. The community around it taps water from it. So we also have, for example, I don't know, is it owned by the traditional railway, but we have a pipe that runs with it some water in Ukambani area. It is tapped from this area. We have a spring in Chulu, and I know you're going to ask me which spring is that you have never heard of.
Yeah.
But we have a spring that provides water, and you can concur with that, because the water we were taking back in high school was from that same place. And we also need to tap to these moments of rainy seasons. Harvest some water, have some tanks, and make sure that every drop we try to utilize it as much as possible. In this scenario, we have organizations that provide tanks. I think the government should somehow subsidize. Oh, okay. Subsidize the tax in tanks, because it's a problem that soon or later we'll have to face it in more rough way. it will affect us in intense way, because there is this time that we had drought in the country, and now imagine that we are coming to conclusion that we have drought in the country. That means the places that we've known of being dry, we are at worse situation. So we had kettles died during that period. We had conflicts with Maasai people. They were coming to graze their kettles in your farm.
No.
So I think water is one of the key issues. And today I was having my continuous assessment test on hydrology. And as I was revising for that paper, I came across a point that said that water is everything, and without water, we have a lot of things that will come upon us. And one of that is what I was saying, the conflicts that we had with Maasai people, because they need water, and water is the one that regenerates plants, and the plants are the one that feeds animals.
Yeah.
We need water, and we need this vegetation. Yeah, I think we'll get into that more as we dive deeper to this.
Yeah, these are very brilliant points that you've made.
Yeah.
From how people, the kind of trees that people plant. We just walk around here, you see good trees, you carry them home.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
that they're going to drink everything from your compound. I think also in the manner in which, very good point on taxation, on how the government should support water harvesting, and I know you have that in deeper depth. And also to add on that, there's a time there came a certain innovation of water storage, where people were being supported by a certain organization to dig down some holes, and they were given a waterproof paper so that when water flows during rainy season, when it settles there, it doesn't go down.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the projects by Kibuta Kibwana, our former governor.
Yeah.
And it was one of the brilliant ideas, because we usually say he's one of the best governors that we have.
Yeah.
And as an educated governor, he thought that was wise, and I truly concur with him. It helped a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, we have benefited from that as our family and also as the community. And I can say that we have harvested a lot of water. I was back home recently, and the water is still there.
Okay.
This water was tapped to the roads. You see, we usually have water that runs alongside the road. Yeah. So this water was tapped in such a way that it runs back to these deep,
The small dams.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me say, yeah, the big holes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it runs there. So this water is not going to waste roads, because you see, once it's not utilized well, it may end up destroying roads. So it's not going to destroy roads, and again, it's going to help the community by maybe being used in agriculture, maybe used in
Even
domestic use actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it had a lot of advantage to the community, and it is one of the legacies that it left.
Thank you so much. And now coming to you on conservation. Tell us about conservation. How do you conserve water everywhere? Because rain falls, sometimes we have the water and we don't conserve it. Yeah, what do we do?
So I would reiterate what I had said earlier, that there is actually no alternative for water. So even whenever it's dry or whatever season that it is, you still need water regardless. So conservation is really important, especially in the large scale. And so in the large scale, that means to include the government or the very major stakeholders that would enable or be a catalyst to fasten the process of conservation. So in this context, I would say consider the fact that terrain, the terrain would dictate where you would locate certain water catchment structures, such as dams. There's that the very wide dam that it's somewhere along your way to Muranga. Yeah? So factors to consider is the terrain, first of all, And also, another thing is to consider the soil structure of an area, So because there are other areas where the ground is easily perforated or the permeability of it, like there's something you said about floods. Why is it that this area, when it rains, it's really flooded, but happens to be the most driest in the dry seasons? So such places would really invest on a large-scale water conservation mechanism, such as that, or at a very small-scale level at home, the tanks and Mitungis, the very smallest of ways to ensure that water is stored in like larger capacities. And this is possible when we take advantage of the rainy seasons, because some areas are not accessed with the municipal water providers, like the ones that county government provide. And that came in, it brought up the conversation of why do we have waters on X day, and why not the other days? It's because there's something called rationing. If we open water to same quantity all the days, it means there are days where 6 out of maybe let's say 3 out of 7, that's the only time all of you have water. So what happens to the rest, the 4 other days, So invest on sustainable structural water catchment resources. And another thing I would say is sustainable agriculture. So that whenever it is rainy, then take advantage of it as planting crops that really do not require too much water, or maybe a lot of water. Aligning yourself with the season, so that whenever it is dry, plant crop resistant crops. Another thing is to consider disaster risk reduction. Whenever you're thinking about conservation, because water is destructive when it's in large amount. So whenever there is consideration of terrain, permeability, perforation of the ground, construct something that would not prompt flash floods when it is in a lot of it. For instance, it doesn't take floods or rainy season for there to be a flash flood. It takes destruction of a dam that is wrongly placed to come wash away, a terrain that's wrong. Like for instance, people that have constructed houses in a slopey area. That's a risky position. In class of disaster management, that's called poor risk assessment. And if you have a dam that's somewhere over that, it means they are susceptible to flash floods, not from the rain per se, but from the destruction of the dam where it's located. And maybe lastly to say, what else? Alternative waste sinks. Because in the large scale companies, they assume that treated waste is safe to be deposited in large water bodies. And I think that's not an alternative, because there is microplastics that some could be soluble in waters. And remember, the ecosystem inside the water, like the organisms that live inside the water, and they rely on plants or whatever ecosystem within for existence, for instance, food. So that's posing a risk to that life underwater. So if there are policies that will be put in place to ensure that by the time waste is being released to the water, or rather as it has existed, that's what it may require in the long run. So what I would suggest is that have alternative waste sinks, not to be deposited in water, to redirect it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could have pipes that pass underground. It doesn't have to just slide and stream wherever, because now you're posing a risk to agriculture as well.
Even the vegetation.
Exactly.
So actually that's a very important perspective, because it means we have a river like Athi, which all of its water you contaminate with chemicals.
Exactly. And it's chemicals that they have
value. That's true.
Because they are semi-treated.
And now going to James, You mentioned a commission that was set up to clean Nairobi River. What's your observation? What's your rating of how deliberate we are to making water available through such initiatives? Because the people who deposit waste into places like Nairobi River are big companies. And what is the solution to the presence of water in specific places?
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you very much, Lopez. Speaking to the commission, first and foremost, I'd like to point out that probably considering the exposition of Nairobi River, it's not an easy task considering that you have to take a multi-stakeholder approach and involving all these communities, all these corporate bodies that are actually involved in the pollution and are going to be involved in the conservation of this river. But on the same note, I haven't seen that much impact considering that it's almost a year now. Same business as usual is continuing. You go to Dandora, you see the dumping is continuing as usual. So I'm yet to see any tangible results, sorry to say so, from that commission. Because as of now, I expect to see something, at least some policies on the ground, but probably they're working on it and hopefully with time we're going to see something being worked on, probably. And speaking to the accessibility and the accessibility of water in Nairobi in this urban context, as I said earlier, we have to first look at the source of this water, and that is the forest, and there are communities that are in these places. And the thing that is causing the pollution, or rather the degradation of these particular catchment areas, it is the communities themselves. So I think if the government, it speaks to governance, because the government then has to look into offering alternative sources of livelihood into these people who are exploiting these catchment areas. And then with that, we can be able to conserve that particular catchment area, and at least we have a flow of water. Now coming to the water that is reaching the urban centers, as I said, the specific context of Nairobi River, we then have to look at social responsibility and also corporate responsibility, probably in the context of extended consumer responsibility, whereby I as an individual, I have to acknowledge that I get my water from Nairobi River is a source of water and it's a living ecosystem, and it's wrong, speaks to sanity and speaks to logic. It's wrong to pollute this particular river, because when I pollute, this water won't be drinkable, it won't be usable, it's not fishable, it's not swimmable. So it speaks to first personal responsibility, because I believe if you want to see conserve the river, then we build within us that particular change that we want to see. So if you want to see a conserve the river, I have to take steps towards that specific context of conservation. So I think it speaks to corporate responsibility and social responsibility. As my colleague Mercy pointed out, you'll find that there are corporates or other companies that deposit not even treated sewage, but even low sewage. See, that speaks to governance, because I'm sure it will trickle down to probably cases of corruption, whereby the specific bodies involved are not taking the relevant steps towards ensuring that these companies are taken into account of their activities, or rather ignorance of these particular companies in that they are polluting. So I think it's also an issue of governance. The government the responsible bodies have to look at these particular companies that are doing these illegal activities, because it's illegal to dump like raw sewage into a river or into any water source. And then, that is for the corporate sector. Then on the issue of rationing and water access, as I think Mercy pointed it out quite well. But I think it's also up to the government also to work on solutions like providing water points whereby these communities can be able to access water in a centralized area, in that even if there's no water at my place, I can get water in another place just around that area, but in a subsidized price. Because you find that the 20 liters dairy can probably goes for around 20 shillings. So if the government can subsidize that and make me access that water at around 5 shillings, that would be better because it isn't an economic burden on me, and at the same time, I'll be able to access that water. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Incredible insights there.
Thank you.
From governance, water resources, personal responsibility, all that. Thank you so much. And now we move to Gatimu so that he guides us on what to do with the people in northeastern Kenya, in the arid areas where it's flooding this month, and after 2 months, animals are even dying of scarcity of water. What is it to be done there?
Okay, thank you, Boniface, for that question. I think when it comes to the topic of water conservation, it is very specific to the context of which geographical location we are talking about. Because the practices of water conservation that might be applicable in the northeastern area that you've asked might not be the perfect fit for areas that have regular rainfall seasons, like maybe in the central. You get? So, in such places, you just have first to agree that you cannot conserve what you don't have. Because if we are talking about water conservation, we first of all have to ensure that they have water. Yeah? And that's why these areas are not very reliant on agriculture. They prefer livestock farming because, first of all, you can move the livestock when there's no water. But I think there are things we can do to probably not eliminate this problem completely, but maybe reduce the effects of such problems. First of all, we need water collection and serious water collection, because, like I said, these places always have are faced with very adverse effects when it's the rainy season, and 2-3 months down the line they are crying that there is shortage of water. So, in terms of conservation of water, I think there are some aspects that you can borrow from what Moore has talked about, in the fact that we are both addressing areas with scarcity of water. In the context of the northeastern region, I first think that we need sustainable practices of storing water. Because in as much as we want to have dams to store water, I don't think that will be sustainable in the long term, in the sense that even the livestock itself, there's very high number of livestock in the area. The evaporation rates in the area is crazy. So, and I think in a sense this is where we have to consider underground water as a source of water. We also have to consider, because we want to be effective in the sense we want to have enough water for domestic usage, we want to have enough water for agricultural use, whether it's the livestock or agricultural production. In this sense, there has to be there's clean water and there's salt water. So if we are considering how we are trying to use this water optimally, you cannot give all the water, the clean water that you have, to your livestock. And then in the evening you're carrying jerry cans 20 kilometers to go, get clean water. Well, you have a water catchment, maybe a few kilometers, that the animals can use the water, but you cannot. Another sense that I think would be very applicable in this place is sometimes you find that they have water, but it's not clean enough for the people to use. And this is why I think we need to bring into water purification, because we are trying to optimize every little drop that we have. If we have water purification practices, and in that case I mean sustainable water purification practices, we can be able to ensure that whatever water that we have, despite the water being not clean originally for human use, we can take advantage of the technology that we have, because these things are there. It's not like it's something that of course we can go and bring up new ways, but there are already ways that you can use to purify water that is existing. And in this way, instead of having to subject the people or maybe even the livestock to water that might give them infections and health complications, by purifying water, you're using the available resources and converting it to to serve the needs of the people. I think it's already happening in some estates of Nairobi, in as much as it might differ in the fact of what scarcity we are talking about. I think in Nairobi we might say we are trying to address, drainage issues and whatever, but in such areas we are basically trying to address the issue of complete lack of water. Because if there is a lot of water only during the rain season, there's only so much you can do to conserve water when you have a flock of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, livestock.
Yeah.
I think ultimately it has to come down to a point where you have to get alternative sources of water. Yeah.
That's true. And also the soil is said to be sandy, so it's a bit difficult for it to retain water for long.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Oh, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the solutions that you have suggested to the problems of water scarcity that we have identified in our communities. I believe that everyone who watches this is able to implement some of them so that we can also make humanity better. Because without water, then humanity is starving. Thank you so much.